from the public again. I tried to access previous meetings on YouTube, but
You cut out for me, but I think you were sharing that you tried to access the videos on YouTube and you weren't able to.
Yeah, where can those be found? I have the City of Minneapolis page pulled up, but I've not been able to find, and there's the committee of the whole, taxation board, public safety, but I can't find the homegrown meetings.
There are 1,000,001 recordings there, so it might be a matter of the city's IT department or whoever's responsible for doing that just being behind. So it's something that I think Tamara and others can share with their teams. Thanks for that feedback.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, if you email me at homegrown@minneapolismn.gov, I can try to facilitate your access to those. They are uploaded periodically, as Sega mentioned, by the IT staff. And so we are, and it's new. It's just been for the, if you're looking beyond the past couple months, you won't find anything since we've just started in the beginning of 2021 here.
I apologize if this is redundant, but are all of, is the email you gave me for Homegrown, that's just for homegrown meetings, or all Minneapolis Council meetings that have happened since 2021? As far as recordings go?
Homegrown@minneapolismn.gov is the contact information for the Food Council. So this food specific work at the city. But I think other councils and boards are also posted on YouTube. So it'd be found on the same city's YouTube page, but I'm not 100% positive of that.
Got it, thank you.
Awesome. Are we recording? Okay. So I want to note that this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota statute section 13D021 due to the declared local health pandemic. I'll now call this meeting to order and ask Tamara to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum. When Tamara calls your name, please say present, Food Council members, and also introduce yourself briefly with your organization, affiliation, and any other information that you'd like to share. For any community members on the call, you've already introduced yourself. So sit tight as we take roll. And I will kick it to Tamara to take roll.
That requires me to unmute. Apologies for that. Typical, yes. Okay. Swatawabdi. Mel Anderson. Beth Dooley. Andrea Ager. Nolan Green.
Present, and I represent Twin Cities Co-op Partners as a produce manager.
Becca Gross.
Present, I'm the community garden coordinator for the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board.
Kim Havey. Andrea Inouye.
Present, and here as a representative from the mayor's office.
Marcus Carr. Kristen Klingler.
Present. Hi, everyone. I am representing the Minneapolis Health Department.
Amy Maz.
Present, and I also work for Hennepin County Environment and Energy.
Emily Mingy.
Present, and I work with the Land Stewardship Project / Land Stewardship Action Fund.
Ibrahim Mohammed. Devon Nolan.
Present. Good evening, everyone. Devon Nolan, and I am the market manager for the West Broadway Farmers Market here in North Minneapolis.
Teresa Opheim.
Present, and I work with Climate Land Leaders, which is an initiative of sharing our roots.
Powell. Eden Reed.
Present. I'm a master's student at the University of Minnesota, working in the Center for Integrated Natural Resource and Agriculture Management.
And Schnoes.
Present, and I'm with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture.
Councilmember Jeremy Schrader.
Hey, everybody. I'm Jeremy Schrader. I'm a city council member for the city of Minneapolis.
Lachey.
I'm sorry, did you say Tiffany?
I did.
Okay. Present, Tiffany Lachey. I'm a farmer and soils researcher with the University of Minnesota.
Jason Walker. Mai Yang. Co-chair Sega Tamina.
Present. And I work at Pillsbury United Communities and serve as one of the co-chairs for the Food Council.
Thanks. Co-chair Kate Siebold.
Present. Hi, everyone. Kate Siebold. I work for Minneapolis Public Schools and coordinate our Farm to School program and serve as the other co-chair alongside Sega.
Thank you. Are there any other Food Council members who have not introduced themselves yet?
Yes, this is Tasha with Appetite for Change and one of the members of Homegrown.
Excellent. Welcome. Thank you, Tasha. Anyone else? We have 15 members and have a quorum. An official meeting can begin.
Awesome. Thank you to the community members who helped us fill the time in the first couple of minutes of the meeting. If there are any other community members that have joined, you are now welcome to introduce yourself.
Hi, this is Sarah Kloss. Thank you.
Awesome.
Alma
So
Borg.
oh, I missed that there.
That's okay. Just Alma Borg. I've spoken a couple times. The community member listening in today.
Welcome.
And hi, Leah Gardner here, and I think I'll be talking shortly, but with Hunger Solutions.
Awesome. With that, we'll continue with our agenda. A copy of the agenda was posted for public access on the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov. Our first item of business is the adoption of our agenda for tonight's meeting. I have a motion from a council member to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve.
So moved. Seconded, Schrader.
Oh,
I think between Devon and Schrader, we have a proper motion before us. Is there any discussion before Tamara takes roll? Beautiful. With that, I'll ask Tamara to take roll on the motion to approve or adopt the agenda.
Okay. Swato Abdi. Mela Anderson.
Here.
Did I hear from Mel Anderson? Just a quick reminder.
Yes, here. Yep.
Okay, so you are present and we are now voting on the agenda. Aye or nay?
Aye.
Awesome. Thank you. Beth Dooley? Andrea Eger? Nolan Green?
Aye.
Becca Gross?
Aye.
Kim Havey? Andrew Inouye?
Aye.
Marcus Carr? Kristen Klingler?
Aye.
Amy Maz?
Aye.
Emily Mingy?
Aye.
Rahim Mohammed? Nolan? Devon Nolan? We are voting on the agenda right now for.
Great, thank you. Aye.
Thank you. Teresa Opheim?
Aye.
Tasha Powell?
Aye.
That one cut out, Tamara.
Eden Reed?
Aye.
Ellen Schnoes?
Aye.
Jeremy Schrader?
Aye.
Tiffany Lachey?
Aye.
Jason Walker? Mai Yang? Sega Tamina?
Aye.
Siebold?
Aye.
16 ayes, that motion is approved. The agenda has been approved.
Awesome. Our next order of business is the acceptance of minutes from our March 10th meeting. May I have a motion from a food council to approve, please?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you,
Motion to
Mel.
approve. Oh,
I heard a motion from Mel. Can I have a second?
Aye.
a second if it hasn't happened.
Awesome. We have a proper motion before us. Is there any discussion before Tamara takes roll? Awesome. With that, I'll ask Tamara to take roll on the motion.
Okay, thank you. I will be calling your name. Please indicate aye or nay in regard to approving the minutes. Swado Abdi? Mel Anderson?
Aye.
Beth Cooley? Andrea Eger? Nolan Green?
Aye.
Becca Gross?
Aye.
Evie? Andrea Inouye?
Aye.
Marcus Carr? Kristen Klingler?
Aye.
Amy Maz?
Aye.
Emily Mingy?
Aye.
Rahim Mohammed? Devon Nolan?
Aye.
Teresa Opheim?
Aye.
Tasha Powell?
Aye.
Reed?
Aye.
Ellen Schnoes?
Aye.
Jeremy Schrader?
Aye.
Tiffany Lachey?
Aye.
Jason Walker? Mai Yang? Sega Tamina?
Aye.
Kate Siebold.
Aye.
16 ayes, the motion to approve the minutes has passed.
Thank you, Tamara, for taking those roll calls. And thank you, everyone, for your patience and for showing up today. A few folks alluded like a heaviness or a deep grief or a deep trauma that they're feeling. And I just want to ensure that we lift the name, the life, the legacy, the family, the loved ones of Dante Wright, who was killed by police in Brooklyn Center. I think that's what people were alluding to. But I just want to ensure that we lift up the name of those directly impacted. With that, we'll move on to our next agenda item. We'll be discussing federal and state food systems, legislative and funding updates. We've got a few folks facilitating, stewarding, prompting the conversation for us today. We've got a few presentations that will follow as well on the agenda, so it's pretty packed, but hopefully exciting, energizing for all of you here today. So I'll kick it first to talk about state food systems to Leah Gardner from Hunger Solutions, who briefly said hello earlier. Devon Nolan and Kate Siebold will also add to some of the feedback or comments that Leah shares. Ladies, the floor is yours.
All right, well, thank you for having me. Nice to see everyone. I am with Hunger Solutions and here to talk about a few different policy items moving at the state legislature. And some I'm more familiar with than others, but I'm going to try to cover what I know about all the things that that have been recommended that you all would probably want to hear about. So there are a few different important food access programs that were cut in the Senate's agriculture omnibus budget, but that are not cut. They're funded in full in the House and within the governor's budget. So we're addressing just in the Senate proposed cuts. And so two of them happened the same way. So I want to describe those together. Those are the Good Food Access Program and Urban Agriculture. So those were, the funds were eliminated for those two in a similar fashion. And then there's another program called Market Bucks that is that was also eliminated in the Senate budget and also is fine in the House and governor's budget. So we are doing some defense work among partners on all of those. And I'm happy to make this a little bit more conversational, and others may, have updates beyond what I know on these issues. So I do encourage folks to chime in. I am happy to hear there's some representation from Appetite for Change. They may know more about urban ag, but I do know that the general strategy is that we want to make sure people understand the importance of these programs as they move into conference committee negotiations. So my recommendation, and I don't know 100% for sure if this is the plan, but I think on all three we'll plan to have sign-on letters going. I just can't say 100% for sure on the urban agriculture one because that's not mine to lead that action on, but I'm hoping that'll be a way that people can take action on that, if not an action alert to conference committee members. So something of that shape, I imagine, will come. But we don't know who is going to be selected to sit on the conference committee yet. So that's partly what we're waiting for. And we are having some discussions with key leaders on these issues in that committee. And so maybe as we learn more, we'll have a better sense of exactly what's needed. But that's what I know about urban agriculture. So it should have been funded without any action from the legislature until 2024. It was zeroed out. So that would be effective in the next budget cycle. It would be gone if the Senate had its way. Same with Good Food Access. And I will put a link in the chat to a sign-on letter that we just got put together today. So I will put that in there and would definitely welcome people sharing that broadly with other partners across the state. I'm trying to think what else. On Market Bucks, we have a sign-on letter going there as well. We've actually had a couple requests to submit that, so it's actually been submitted to legislators a couple times. Senator Erin Murphy was intending to speak and potentially share the Market Bucks letter with all of her colleagues. And I don't know whether she has done that yet or not. I actually was monitoring their floor session until I had to hop on here. And I think they just didn't get to that bill yet, or maybe they won't, or who knows at this point. But I had a chance to talk with her. And before I could even say, and good food access, urban egg, she's like, yep. No, we're not. So she's right there and planning to do whatever she can on all of these issues and sees them as interconnected. So that's really good news. And I think we'll find strong support from members in the House as well on these. So I think it's never fun to have to defend programs, but I think we've got strong support, and I'm more optimistic even today than I was a couple days ago. For those that talked to me then, you might notice that. So, so conversations are going well with key members right now, and the administration understands the importance of these. So, so those are the defense ones, and I can pause. I don't know if anyone has any other updates or knows any more action items being discussed on these, but that's kind of the gist of what I know, and I'll put links in the chat here in just a sec.
Is there any way for those links to be sent out to members of the public to be involved as well? Because we don't have access to the chat that you're talking about.
Yeah, so I can make sure that they're easy to find off the Hunger Solutions website, if that makes the most sense. I mean, I can certainly share them with you all to post somewhere too. I'm not sure if you have a good platform to share more broadly, but otherwise I can offer to try to make it easy to find all these off the homepage on hungersolutions.org.
Okay, I'll check that out. Thank you.
Okay, and don't look for it tonight. I'll have to nudge our communications person, because I think right now it wouldn't be easy.
No worries. I'll look in a couple days.
Okay. I'll make a note. Any other questions or thoughts on those?
I just will chime in. Leah, this is Patty Bowler from the Health Department. Hi. The other cut in the Senate, which is quite disturbing to local public health, is there's a $10 million a year cut to the State Health Improvement Partnership, or SHIP, funds that local public health get. And as you probably know, we use those funds for a variety of chronic disease prevention work, including healthy eating projects and policy change. So that's another thing to add. And it's just on the Senate side, not in the House omnibus bill. And that's in the Health and Human Services omnibus in the Senate.
Well, I can mention a couple other topics that I think would be of interest. Before I forget, I'm adding one that I didn't pre-suggest, but I'm realizing I don't know why. So we do have a bill that Hunger Solutions has been working on, based on input from directly impacted community members regarding increasing the income limit for SNAP. So states do have federal flexibility to have the income limit up to 200% of poverty. And in Minnesota, we haven't taken advantage of that yet. It's at 165%. We do know that members have been, or that people have been having issues and bumping up against that income limit and facing food insecurity and not being eligible due to income for the program. So we're hopeful that this would be really meaningful for those households. That's what we've heard and had people sharing their own stories. And so I'm optimistic that one got hearings in both the House and Senate, has support, didn't make it in the governor's budget just due to timing, but I think has the administration support. And I would say is well positioned as something that's basically cost neutral to the state, but would bring in resources from the federal government for that program to reach more people. So that's another one, if you don't mind, I didn't mention before, but I want to share that letter, sign-on letter link too. So that's a good thing that is moving. And then I know that people are also supporters of farm to school. Good news on that too. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, those that work closely on it, but I believe that it got an increase actually of 100,000 in the Senate, and then is, you know, flat at its current level of funding in the House and in the governor's budget. So that's good news. There's a possibility of it getting a little more funds, or at minimum, it looks like it's safe. And if there's anything I don't know on that one, I haven't been able to stay plugged into coalition meetings or anything, but that's what I know. Cool. Then the last one I'll mention is we've been working on a campaign to secure school meals for all. Actually, at both the federal and the state level, we're pushing hard on that right now. We had a bill that was going to focus as a first step on something called the community eligibility provision that, based on certain benchmarks of poverty, high poverty schools can use federal funds to, at the school or at the district level, provide free meals to all kids, universal meals. I thought that bill was not going to make it because it didn't make it into the original House Education Omnibus bill, but I just saw an amendment that actually, I guess we're going to do something on it still. So I'm still working to understand the amendment, but it looks like basically the state is going to provide some funds to make it easier for schools to afford to take up this program. So that's wonderful news and a big step for us in Minnesota, where we've kind of sat on this program and not used it very well at all for, well, since it was created about a decade ago. So not universal meals for all kids in all schools across the state yet, but we're trying to, make a step in that direction with that bill. This current amendment, I don't really have anything yet to say, how to craft an action alert around that, or, it doesn't have a bill number, but I will definitely keep you all posted if we create an action alert to thank the House members for that, or urge the Senate to take it up, or anything along those lines. But it's kind of breaking news, so that's all I know right now. That's what I read. So that is my quick ramble on all of the bills that I can think of. But you're welcome to chime in if I'm missing something, or if anyone has questions. But otherwise, I'll focus on putting some of these links in, and then I'll also put our website in here and just look at hungersolutions.org for more action alert stuff as we're able to get it up.
That was awesome, Leah. There's so much there.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Helen, also a food council member, has been dropping some links into the chat as well that I think will align with what you're about to drop into the chat, which for community members, Leah shared should be accessible on hungersolutions.org in the next few days or week or so. But are there any questions that are coming up for people?
I forgot to say one thing. You made me realize I should clarify, look in the next 2 days, not in a week, because there's a chance that as soon as Monday or as soon as we know the conference committee members, basically if we hear from any of our allies, like get this letter in now, that's what we'll do. So I would highly recommend look at the end of this week, or check in a day even, and hopefully we'll have some of these sign up, at least the ones that are ready will have some sign on letters up that you can add your organizations to. And they are just organizational, not individual sign-ons right now. That's what is being recommended, but there might be more opportunities for individual action to come, and we'll definitely share that on our website. But yeah, time sensitive. So looking like, think about it as a roughly 2-day opportunity for action.
I just want to note as well too, this is Sam Jensen from the Health Department, that if there is relevant links, information, so on, it will be included in the agenda, which will be posted online.
Thank you for that, Sam. Any other questions or thoughts? I know there were a few food council members who might add to this conversation about state level legislative or funding updates.
I was going to chime in about farm to school if it didn't get covered, but Leah covered it, and Helen also put the info in the chat. So we're good on that front.
Awesome.
I was just going to add, this is Devon from Appetite for Change, with Appetite for Change, that we've been working really closely with Hunger Solutions to make sure that there's been a youth voice involved in particular around the healthy, hunger-free schools. So it's been great working with Hunger Solutions and other youth-led organizations so that they have a little bit of an advantage in getting involved in policy work younger, so that hopefully we can change our world. Thank you.
Just a quick question for those of us on the phone. What you're putting to the chat, is there a like a live video conference that we can join instead to view the information you're putting into the chat, or is that a separate area beyond the meeting?
Yes, that's an awesome question. Another community member kind of lifted up the same question. Typically, any links that are relevant to the conversations happening during a food council meeting will be hyperlinked in the agenda. I'm from the city who supports Tamara, just confirmed that. So look to the agenda first for links. But then things obviously naturally emerge. So what we'll ask is for guest speakers who have links that they want to share that weren't thought of in advance, that they just make those accessible. So sometimes we might dictate the website to you, which is what we've done here. Leah Gardner from Hunger Solutions shared, look to hungersolutions.org, and links will be live in the next day or so for you to take action and learn more about the legislative updates she shared.
Perfect, thank you.
Cool. Thank you so much, Leah. We're going to move on to another discussion around federal level food systems. We have Jill and Amanda joining us from the Public Health Law Center. So I'll kick it to you all to provide some legislative or funding updates at the federal level.
Great. Thank you, Tega. I'm Jill Krieger. I haven't introduced myself yet. I work at the Network for Public Health Law. And so I'm really glad to be here with you. And I'm going to have, super high level overview, kind of a smattering of things. And I was just trying to guess what might be most interesting to you all. So if you have follow-up questions, I'll either, Amanda and I will both, so stopping for a moment. So I'm going to kind of cover the food production, climate, environment side of things. and Amanda is going to focus more on nutrition, the nutrition side of things, is roughly how we'll approach this. So we'll each, talk for, I don't know, 8 to 10 minutes, I think we said. Does that sound okay? And then, 10 minutes after that for Q&A. Is that all sound okay? Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay, good. So that's kind of the plan. So if you have any follow-up questions, if anything I say is of interest that you want to know more about, or anything Amanda says, there will be Q&A, or you can ask while we're talking. Whatever works, whatever your normal practice is. And then, if we can answer it on the fly, we'll do that. If not, we can also follow up too. So my understanding was that there was just interest, especially in what kinds of, what's in all of this flurry of recent federal legislation or proposed legislation that might be relevant for a local food policy council. What kind of funding streams might there be for cities, as well as for, participants in the food system. So that's kind of, I think, the charge, loosely defined. So that's what we'll do. So, and I'll kind of go in reverse chronological order. So starting with the proposed Infrastructure Act from the president, and then going backwards. So we actually know the least about where I'm going to start, but there's still opportunities, I think, to influence the more recent things. So the infrastructure proposal from President Biden, the American Jobs Plan, is still mostly what's available to the public is sort of the broad outlines of what the president is proposing. What we know is that he and the administration are proposing essentially a broadened understanding of infrastructure. So it's not just, highways and railroads and airlines, but a much broader, that it could include the childcare system and a much broader conception of infrastructure. So what I've been able to glean about what the president is proposing as far as nature-based infrastructure, which I think is where local food systems might partially fit. I've got a couple of sort of broad outlines. I don't have a lot of details though. But what we know is that this is now, there's a lot of conversation that will be happening with Congress, and more details will emerge, and there should be opportunities then to weigh in with Congress, and more details will emerge. But anyway, I think it's important that the recognition of nature-based infrastructure, and I think what the administration means by that is, the land and how, wetlands, like what is the role of wetlands in addressing flooding? What is the role in forests, and, and how we could structure forests, how we, prescribe burns or that sort of thing in preventing wildfires. So anyway, nature-based infrastructure is the terminology being used. There's also language about clean drinking water infrastructure that to increase, to update and modernize clean drinking water infrastructure. There's language about a civilian climate corps that would train and provide opportunities for conservation and resilience workers, agricultural resources management, climate smart technologies. So I haven't found a whole lot that was specifically about local food systems at the level of detail that's available to us now, but it seems clear that could be within the understanding of the administration, the broad understanding of the administration about what infrastructure is. So moving backward in time to the American Rescue Plan, that is actual past legislation, so we know more about that. So there were two broad things I wanted to highlight there. One of them is that the contents of the American Rescue Plan are being called the most significant legislation for Black farmers and more generally for farmers of color since the 1964 Civil Rights Act. So there's targeted debt relief for socially disadvantaged farmers, significant debt relief for socially disadvantaged farmers, including farmers who are not who are current on their payments. And there's a whole package of outreach, technical assistance grants, and other sort of classic USDA services, all intended for socially disadvantaged farmers. And certainly that could be relevant to any local food system, including one in Minneapolis. The other thing was the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. Folks may be familiar with that, but it's a fund that would provide training, TA, and grants to support restaurants particularly. And there are two ways that can be calculated, broadly speaking. The most common way that's talked about is based on revenue loss associated with the pandemic. But there have been questions, I understand, about restaurants that maybe weren't, had opened sort of just before the pandemic or during the pandemic or didn't have a full year in 2019. So there also might be a calculation for relief under the Restaurant Revitalization Fund based on eligible expenses. But that's a significant effort within the American Rescue Plan to revitalize restaurants, which certainly, as we all know, have been hard hit during the pandemic. Going back further in time to December of 2020, the Consolidated Appropriations Act. Again, I'm not sure what programs you're already familiar with, so forgive me if I'm talking about things you already know, or if there are things that are new. I'm happy to talk more in the Q&A. But the Consolidated Appropriations Act had a bump up in funding for the local agriculture market program, which was a new name for a consolidation of two pre-existing programs, the Farmers Market Local Food Promotion Program and the Value-Added Producer Grant Program. And so those two programs have been pretty critical for local food systems. And so it's important that the Consolidated Appropriations Act provided additional funding, at a higher, they're discretionary funding, but they were funded at a higher level than they had been for the previous year. So there may be opportunities to tap into that for Minneapolis. Let's see, I just said that the American Rescue Plan Act is being called, one of the most important pieces of legislation for farmers of color since the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Similarly, the Consolidated Appropriations Act is being called one of the most significant environmental laws in decades. So we really are having important legislation, some of which is sort of about getting money out the door, but some of which is about policy change. So those provisions in the Consolidated Appropriations Act from last December, there's a sort of a wealth of provisions basically to support the transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. And again, I'm not sure how much that would be of interest to this group, so I just wanted to broadly name that. One particular piece of that has to do with HFCs, or hydrofluorocarbons, which folks may know is really important as a short-lived climate pollutant. It's been a focus of a lot of international climate-related activity, so addressing HFCs sooner rather than later would really help buy time to address carbon and climate change more generally. So anyway, there's a number of really important provisions related to reducing HFCs and transitioning, which I think enters into local food systems discussions in terms of transitions that we may see, in retail supermarkets, for example, related to refrigeration. And so there will be strategies in terms of training, technical assistance, grant programs, support for research and development but all of which may be important, in food cooperatives, supermarkets, anybody who has to refrigerate food could be relevant to local food systems. So those were some of the pieces I wanted to highlight related to kind of recent federal legislation. And then there are some other developments I just wanted to touch on. You all may know probably that the USDA has established an Office of Urban Agriculture. That's new within the last year or two. And they did last year release grants for urban agriculture, a program called Urban Agriculture and Innovation Production Competitive Grants Program. So there may be opportunities there for Minneapolis. The Office of Urban Agriculture is also providing support for composting initiatives. And then the other final thing I wanted to touch on was the Regional Food System Partnerships Program, which is, again, a fairly new program, I believe, created under the 2018 Farm Bill. And it's really for planning and design related to local food systems. And so I think it was in 2020, maybe in the fall of 2020, they did, USDA did release a set of grants I think it was to 23 grantees in 15 states. And I looked and there were no grants in the state of Minnesota. But it might be helpful just, and I can share links or if that would be of interest, but that would be a separate funding stream for some of the local food systems work. It would probably require, a greater focus, a broader geographic focus than just Minneapolis. I haven't studied closely the eligibility criteria, but it looks like it should be more. It doesn't have to be statewide, but certainly beyond just the city of Minneapolis. But it might be interesting, either as a funding stream or just to see, like, well, what are other folks working in local food systems, doing in these 15 other states? So again, that's just a really high-level overview of some developments at the federal level related to, food production and renewable energy.
Thank you so much, Jill. I see Teresa's hand is up. And then I also just wanted to correct earlier, Sam had shared for community members dialing in that in the meeting minutes, which are posted following every meeting, that, gems from the chat will be captured there. So just correcting that comment earlier. Teresa, if you had a question or comment, feel free to unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you, Sega. So thank you, Jill, for that overview. The Black debt relief is huge. It only applies to those who had USDA owns loans as of January 1st of this year, I believe. So all these people who are in the pipeline right now are not going to be able to take part in that, which is really unfortunate. But the other thing that I wanted to mention was if we can get BIPOC farmers on the land, and really any beginning farmers, they will tend to get land that is considered marginal by the big guys who have corn and soybeans. So conservation is really a potential kind of co-payment, as well as growing food, getting paid for ecosystem services. I think that's going to have to be a big strategy for beginning farmers to raise enough money to make an income for themselves. So we really want really strong funding for ecosystem service payments like sequestering carbon, so that those growing our food have that source of income. Just a comment.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful to point out.
Thank you, Teresa. Are there other comments or questions?
I'll jump in. This is Helen. Just that there's also American Rescue Plan funding coming to the state of Minnesota. and agencies have submitted their proposals for consideration by higher powers. But we were able to do some innovative funding with the CARES Act last year. And so just there's like things coming, through USDA, but we're waiting to see what has support to utilize some of that funding here. So that American Rescue Plan money is like going to come at like every level of government, but has opportunity to support local food systems, just so that kind of state federal intersection isn't lost in thinking about opportunities. But a lot's unknown now, so I can't say more than that, but it's coming.
Thank you for that comment, Helen.
So this is Amanda. If there aren't additional questions about Jill's presentation, this might actually just picking up from where Helen left off, talking about the American Rescue Plan and some of the funding that's in there for states, as well as locals, which I was going to just touch on briefly before getting into some of the other stuff. I can get going now if this feels like an appropriate time for me to do that. So good evening, everyone. Amanda Carls, Public Health Law Center. Really happy to be here. It's been a while since I've had an opportunity to talk to folks at Homegrown Minneapolis, but happy to be here and really excited that you all are continuing to do some awesome work. You're one of the more sort of functioning food policy councils in the country as far as, sort of what I've been able to see monitoring things on not just federal level, which I do part of the time, but also local level, which is kind of one of my favorite areas of focus. So I'm super happy to be here. Can you guys all hear me okay, or am I freezing up? We're good? Okay. Jill, okay. I geeked out a little bit and actually put together some PowerPoint slides. So I'm going to see, I'm not super used to using Teams, but I'm going to see if I can share. Let's give it a try. And if not, I'll just talk. Let's see here, 3, 2, 1, it looks like. Okay, that doesn't look like it's working. So I'm gonna chat if I can get back into the, there we go. Okay, so forget the PowerPoint, but feel special that I made one for you. I guess we'll leave it at that. So basically just picking back up from where we left off in the conversation, I want to talk a little bit about, this is, because now my camera's off too, so I don't think anyone can see me. That's okay. As long as you can hear me, that should work. So I'm going to talk tonight about some of the updates that have happened at the federal level. And at Public Health Law Center, we can't lobby. We also can't provide legal representation. So a lot of what I focus on tends to be sort of monitoring what's happening at the agency level, where we can actually have some sort of impact in terms of trying to sort of sway the agencies to do better for people. And one area of focus is USDA. But as it happens, of course, the American Rescue Plan has a lot of provisions that directly relate to agency action, especially at USDA. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. But as was already mentioned, there is funding, and I just want to say this as sort of an introductory point. There is funding within the American Rescue Plan that's specifically allocated for local governments, in addition to the state governments, as Helen pointed out, to be able to address sort of public health emergency reliefs as they relate to COVID, especially including assistance to households, small businesses, and nonprofits. And I don't have the full details on what that's going to look like yet. I think it may have come out from Treasury yet, but I haven't seen it. So you'll want to be kind of looking to guidance docs from the Treasury Department to understand what exactly that's going to mean. But I'm hopeful that there'll be opportunities for innovation along the lines of what was available under the CARES Act. I know that in Minneapolis, there was some really cool use of CARES Act funding, as was there at the Hennepin County level. And as a matter of fact, for any of you who are interested in kind of understanding more about what can be done during COVID at a local level as it pertains to some of this federal funding and just other opportunities, one thing to check out is if you go to, there's a website that part of a project that I work on called the Healthy Food Policy Project. So it's healthypolicyproject.org. And there you'll find a COVID-19 food policy index where we have gathered and summarized a variety of different policies that relate to local government action during COVID-19 to increase food access. But anyway.
Can you repeat that website?
Yep. healthyfoodpolicyproject.org.
Thank you.
So another key piece though of the American Rescue Plan are the provisions that are contained in its sections 1101 to 1108 of the Act. If anybody wants to get super wonky and take a look at the Act, that's where you'll find them. And these relate to key investments to food assistance programs to mitigate what's going on right now, specifically the extraordinarily high levels of hunger and hardship that we're seeing as a result of the pandemic. And so I'll just highlight a few of these at very high level, but if anyone has questions, we can dig in a little bit more. Things that it does, for example, as it relates to SNAP, is that it extends a 15% increase in SNAP benefits through September of 2021. It also provides $20 million to the USDA to help expand SNAP online purchasing and the development of mobile payment technologies for SNAP benefits. And I want to just sort of note as a side note here, this is not specific to the Act, but just sort of other things happening generally with SNAP kind of during this period. There's also emergency allotments. I think that was alluded to earlier. That is continuing, as well as a suspension of work rules for what you sometimes hear referred to as ABODs. I don't like the acronym, but it refers to able-bodied adults without dependents. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, there's a suspension of work requirement rules that would normally apply to folks that would fit into that category. Going back to the American Rescue Plan Act, there's also going to be an extension of Pandemic EBT. So through Pandemic EBT, this is the program where eligible school kids receive temporary emergency nutrition benefits that are loaded onto an EBT card. So just similar to what you get in the SNAP program. And they're able to use those cards, or their families are, to purchase food if the kids' schools are closed or not operating during COVID-19. Also, there's additional funding coming at the Commodity Supplemental Food Program, which is a program that provides nutritious USA-sourced food, puts them into food packages for low-income seniors. Also, this is, I think, an interesting or exciting, I guess, development under the Act. The Child and Adult Care Food Program, which is a federal food program that ordinarily provides reimbursements for meals and snacks that are served to eligible children and adults that are enrolled in participating child care centers and daycare homes and adult daycare centers. They're going to take that, use the CACFP program as a vehicle to also provide meals to young adults ages 18 to 24 who are experiencing homelessness so that they can also receive meals during the pandemic. There's also going to be additional investments in WIC, partially to help kind of modernize the program and to help create some innovations around the program. There's some recognition that WIC is kind of lagging behind technologically some of the other food programs. And so there's nearly $900 million being dumped into things like, and I say dumped, I don't mean that pejoratively, but put into the WIC program to help modernize it and expand through new innovations. And then also, I think this is great during the remainder of the summer and through September of this year, there's also temporary increases for fruit and vegetable benefits under the program. So recipients, instead of receiving $9, will be able to receive $35 per month for fruit and veg purchases. And also just pointing out that not specific to the act again, but just other kind of COVID related flexibilities we're seeing at the federal level. We continue to see lots of flexibilities around school meals that are going to continue through the rest, at least, of the 2021 school year. These include mealtime waivers, non-congregate feeding waivers, and waivers to allow parents to pick up meals and bring them home to their kids. And just kind of as a related note, also, you may have heard that there have been a lot of additional flexibilities around online purchasing for SNAP and WIC throughout the pandemic. And I think that those are changes that were really, spurred on by the pandemic. But I think were fortuitous, sort of a small silver lining, and hopefully something that will continue to benefit the WIC and SNAP programs going forward. So I'm not quite sure how to get my camera to turn back on, but that's kind of the bulk of my coverage. But would be happy to take any questions if there are any.
I think you'll want to stop.
So just to clarify, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, maybe.
There it is.
There. Sorry,
Yeah.
you guys sorry, you had to look at a blank screen the whole time.
And there was a question.
Yes, it's so just to clarify, some of the additional extensions on WIC and SNAP have been primarily due to COVID, but the hope is that will extend through and beyond the pandemic. Is that correct, or am I wishful thinking here?
Well, Jill, feel free to chime in on this too. I mean, I think, definitely some of the extensions that we've seen around, like what I was just saying, around like some of the online purchasing, those are here to stay. Okay. I think it'll be a matter of funding as far as what else continues. We have seen already the Biden administration being fairly progressive in terms of their commitment to expanding these programs. And I think there will be, I would be surprised if there was not an understanding going forward that even after the pandemic is officially over, that there isn't an ongoing need as people continue to recover from job loss and other disruptions around the pandemic. So I am optimistic that will be the case.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Amanda before we move on to the next agenda item?
I was going to add too, this is a little off topic, my conversation, but just because I love thinking about what can be done at the local level, and that's where you all are sitting and thinking. I think one thing to be thinking about right now is not just like what's going on at the federal level and the state level, but where can you at a local level be filling in gaps and innovating, because really local governments, especially to the extent you can influence yours, you have an opportunity to really kind of be labs for innovation. And so I'm thinking about, some of the activity around school meals, that Leo was talking about in terms of especially the CEP efforts. So the idea of getting schools that are eligible to participate in the community eligibility provision, either at a school level, a group of school level, or a district level, to participate in that provision, to make sure that they're maximizing federal funding, especially for those schools or groups of schools or districts that can qualify for full federal reimbursement. And, just want to drop that kind of in your laps to think about whether or not there might be a way to encourage Minneapolis to make sure that it is fully maximizing CEP. You guys are already doing such awesome stuff, making sure that there's free breakfast for all kids. And I know that there's some school meals folks on the call too. So just dropping that there for you all to maybe think about as a way to think about strategically how you can fill in some gaps around what is being done at state and federal levels.
On that, do you have any suggestions for public members of the community to engage more and help with that kind of effort?
Well, I'm not a community organizer. Leah, are you still on?
She is left.
I'm guessing there will be people more informed than I am on a sort of a community organization strategy. And I would definitely welcome any input from folks who have that. I'm a little bit hamstrung too in terms of what I can say, just because I'm not allowed to do anything that looks like lobbying. I can sort of introduce the idea, but I probably can't get too much further down the road than that.
Sure, that makes sense. I appreciate it anyway, thanks.
I do see a hand up from Kate.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Hi, Kate.
I'll just chime in. Since I work for Minneapolis Public Schools in our culinary department, I will say CEP is a fantastic program. And for those of you who are wondering specifically about Minneapolis Public Schools, we do participate in CEP, and several of our schools qualify. And so we do take advantage of that program. And as Amanda mentioned, also do universal free breakfast. But there is definitely a lot of information if you're curious about learning more about CEP on the Minnesota Department of Education website to kind of understand how it works currently. But I will just mention that MPS as a district does participate.
Thanks, Kate. Awesome. Great discussion on what's happening at the federal and state level. Thank you so much, Jill and Amanda, for what you've just shared with us. If there aren't any more questions or comments, we'll move to the next agenda item. And I just learned that Anu Ramaswamy from Princeton University, who is going to share a few updates around staffing for the Minneapolis Food Action Plan on agenda number 6, actually has to leave at 7 o'clock. So I just want to kick it over to Anu to share what she prepared for today, and then we'll get back to the agenda as planned.
Hi there, can you hear me, Sega?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay, great to see you all. Many of you know Dana Boyer and I have been working. I moved to Princeton almost 2 years back, and we've been working with you all at the Food Policy Council, both from the University of Minnesota and Princeton. So Dana Boyer has now taken up a position with Qantas, which is actually a food system consulting firm in California. And so Hikaru Peterson, who's a faculty member and a colleague of mine at University of Minnesota, will be taking on the role with her student. So she has a student, and so we would help in the manner that we had previously, providing technical assistance, data, and I will continue to be engaged and happy to provide the types of data and analysis that we had previously done. But going forward, I see Hikaru Peterson as being the lead faculty member with her student, and I'm happy to support in any way we can. But thanks for engaging and having, we've enjoyed the engagement and contributions. I don't think I have anything more specific. Hikaru wasn't able to be there today. And so as we go forward, I also wanted to say we all are on a joint USDA NEFA grant called Innovations in the Food, Energy, Water Nexus. And so through that grant, we are collaborating with the city, with the University of Minnesota, Princeton University, and Syracuse, who you're going to hear from next. So in that way, we'll continue to be engaged and involved, and happy to share any technical or non-technical information that the group needs, and to learn from you all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Anu, for showing up. Really to share that you're transitioning, or your team's transitioning, and Hikaru will be leading this work. We're sorry she couldn't be here. but there will be more to come in the future. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And we'll leave the other food action plan updates for just a second. We'll pause them for just a second and actually go back to agenda item number 5. Reese is here from the Good Acre and prepared a presentation to share some of the work, some of the awesome work that's happening out of the Good Acre. So we'll kick back up to that agenda item and then circle back to share more of the food action plan updates.
Thank you. So I think Tamara's got control of this, of these few slides I brought. But I'll basically, I don't know how many of you know what the Good Acre is. I'll basically let you know what we do. We're a nonprofit food hub. We're in beautiful Falcon Heights, Minnesota, right by the state fairgrounds. We've been around for about 6 years. Thanks, Tamara. And everything, basically at the heart of everything we do are farmers. And our whole mission is to help farmers improve their markets. That's why we're out there. That's why we do what we do. So we have always been in farm to school. That's kind of our gig. We started doing classes for the people that work in the school systems, trying to encourage them, teaching them how to use local food. And by the time 2020 hit, we were about at 26 different districts throughout the state. We started a vocational training program to actually start training people to work in schools from the very get-go. Hired a local woman, Michelle Cunningham. She read it, ran it, got it accredited. Life was great. Pandemic hit. So we started this program called LEAF. And last year in the winter, like I said, we spent a great deal of our time trying to figure out ways to help farmers. And when the pandemic hit, we knew that there was going to be some stress on the system. We had no idea how bad it was going to be, but at the time, it was looking like there wasn't going to be many farmers markets, and if they were going to be limited. And many of our farmers that we work with, they're mostly BIPOC farmers, Hmong and different groups, and they'd already planted, or at least they'd already bought their seeds to plant. So we came up with this idea, LEAF, Local Emergency Assistance Farmer Fund, to basically function as crop insurance for these farmers. I used to farm, and large farms get crop insurance, corn and soybeans. Most of the commodity crops are guaranteed farming. And for small farmers, especially crop farmers, there isn't much out there. And if they have a crop loss, they take it hard. So we decided, well, let's raise some money and make it so that they do have a fallback. So we partnered with Lake Winds, Mill City Farmers Market, the Food Group, LEDC, Latino Economic Development Center, Hmong American Partnership, and the Department of Ag, and kicked in a bunch of money and got started. The first weekend we did it was soon after George Floyd was murdered. And the farmers markets across the area were canceled that weekend. So we told the farmers that we knew, mostly BIPOC, just come bring it to us, we'll buy it, and we'll figure out what to do with it after we purchase it. We had about 25 farmers come. We bought everything they had and donated it back to food shelves in the area. And that's sort of how LEAF kind of materialized, is we decided, well, if we can do that, let's take this to a bigger level. So after each of our partners had donated some money, we wrote a grant, got some money from the Bush Foundation, and set up a system where we basically gave each farmer $7,500. And then they sort of delivered up to that. We take anything they had, we paid them at wholesale prices, actually a little bit more than wholesale. And we worked with about 50 different farmers, most of them Hmong, all BIPOC. And we partnered with HAP on this because they have an ag piece, and it really worked well. And then LEDC had shared ground farmers. HAFA was part of it. We've got every farmer we could involved in it. And each one of them was given $7,500. Like it says in this slide, they had to be under $100,000 gross. That was not a problem, unfortunately. And we continued to grow it. And as we grew it, we decided to take the food into the neighborhoods. So we dropped at Seward Co-op, we dropped at the Grease Pit, we dropped at Powderhorn Park, we dropped at Brackett Park, we took some to Sanctuary Church on Friday afternoons, and then we work with Catholic Charities to get it distributed around the city too. We spent about $300,000 for farmers, a little bit over 300,000, donated almost 200,000 pounds of food to these different food shelves. And one of the cool things about it was that we had, we got a lot of culturally appropriate food that we weren't expecting. Bitter ball, sweet potato leaves. And when we took them in food shelves in different neighborhoods, they were really, really popular. And the food group has been working on this already. We had not, as the Good Acre, we had not done much hunger relief. There's some groups in town that do it really well, and we didn't want to step anybody's toes. So we were kind of learning. But we did learn that once we got these culturally appropriate crops into these food shelves, they were really, really popular. And sweet potato leaves, we had a line around the block at the Sanctuary Church on the north side of Minneapolis to get these West Africans getting these sweet potato leaves. So that's opened a door for us this year. We're going to continue LEAF this year. We've got about, I don't know how much money, about 150,000 so far. We're raising more. We hope to get up to the same level we were at last year. We've got, I don't know how many farmers signed up. Yeah, we're going to continue it as long as we can, as long as the need is there. And the farmers need it, and the community really appreciated the food we were donating, because it was fresh food, and it was all locally grown produce, which some of the drop site we went to, there wasn't a lot of local food in those sites. So it was really popular. And let me just say one other thing, which is kind of a good thing. We've got a partnership with Second Harvest this year. And for the next 3 years, they've agreed to spend $1 million on locally grown produce at the price that we're asking for. So it's $350,000 a year, all BIPOC grown, locally grown produce that they're going to purchase and put into their food shelves. So a lot of times when you're dealing in hunger relief, the prices aren't great. And consequently, we haven't worked in it much, but Second Harvest has agreed to raise their prices for us. And so our farmers can make a living wage off these. And it should make a significant difference, I hope, in the lives of some of our farmers. Okay, I'm done. Unless you got questions.
That was awesome, Reese. Thank you so much. Curious if folks have questions or thoughts.
Yeah, hi Reese, this is Teresa Opheim, and I'm wondering why the requirement of 25% of the household income?
Well, because what we were trying to do was deal with individual farms. And when we first started it, right, because we were getting some of the bigger farms in there, and what we were trying to do is concentrate on 5 acres or less. That's what we've always done at the Good Acre. That's who we work with mostly. And so we were getting some bigger farms in, and we were just trying to make sure that the smaller farms got the money before we ran out, because at the time we didn't know how much we were raising money as we went, so we weren't sure what our total was going to be. By the end of that, we had less than that and pretty much dropped it. Once we knew we were going to raise as much money as we did, then we could cool down. But we were just afraid that we'd have a rush on all the money and we couldn't spread it to the people that really needed it.
It's a terrific program, and I hope it continues after COVID.
Yeah, thank you. We're going to try.
Reese, did you mention if you're enrolling any new farmers this year, or if you'll continue with the same farmers as last year?
No, we've just we're going to yeah, we'll take it as far as we can. We've got a new application out. Because of the landscape's changed it a little bit because of second harvest. So some of the larger farms are going to second harvest. We've been signing contracts with second harvest for $20,000 per farm, and so we're hoping to bring in smaller farms as these larger guys get these $20,000 contracts, and we'll bring in some smaller farms. So we're going to continue. Yeah, we're going to continue bringing in farms. I mean, a lot of our farms came from HAP and the farmers, their community, and the need is tremendous this year. So,
hey Reese, do you want to mention it's Beth, do you want to mention the award Leaf got? The Environmental Initiative Award? It's cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Yeah, no, we did. We got one of the Environmental Initiative Awards that they announced a couple days ago. So, yeah, very proud of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting some national recognition, which is really cool.
Yeah, well, we had great partners. You know, I mean, that was part of it. Is we had, you know, LEDC contributed money and time, and like I said, HAP and Lake Winds. I mean, we just had it came together.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the one thing about the pandemic last year and all the racial unrest we had in our city is there's some collaborations that we were able to engage in that were fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and you guys were right on the forefront of that. It was really cool.
Thanks.
Awesome. There are folks celebrating you, Reese, you and your team in the chat. And I'm sure others are feeling that on the line right now. And it's just cool to see an example that really affirms that Black, Indigenous, people of color who farm are worth the investment, and that the solutions to hunger live within our communities. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Other questions or thoughts? If not, we'll move on to the next agenda item. Beautiful. Thank you, Reese, for sharing. Come back again and let us know how we can support your work. We'll move on to our next agenda item, focused on the Food Action Plan. Anu briefly shared her update around staff transitions that are supporting the Food Action Plan that we've been working on for the past year and some change, several years now. But there are a few other updates on the agenda, so I'll kick it over to Tamara to get us started, and then folks from Syracuse will share as well.
I think that I will just defer to Syracuse since I can defer my update to next month, and we have such a limited amount of time left. So
awesome. Thanks, Tamara.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, everybody. So like I said in the introduction, my name is Graham Ambrose. I'm a PhD student now at Syracuse. Previously had been in Minneapolis, so it's nice to be back. I know Professor Saba Siddiqui. She said she had to step off for a second for some family things. She said she's going to try to step back on, but I don't see her at the moment, so I'll just go ahead. I'll try to be brief as well, as I know we're also running late. And if I can share screen quickly. Okay, I think you all can see this. And I'll just, oops. Okay. So I just put this slideshow together to kind of talk about this next phase that we're moving into for the Food Action Plan. And it's really the interviews to understand kind of what the Homegrown Minneapolis is doing, but also how each participant has engaged and been a part of the food action planning process. And again, if anybody has questions, please chime in. And like I said, I will try to be quick. So what is the purpose of this study, specifically these interviews? So we're trying to better understand the design, the role of urban food policy councils, but also we're trying to understand the experiences of individuals that are participating in these councils. So this is coming at the end of the food action planning process, but Professor Siddiqui and I are actually looking at studying 15 publicly mandated food policy councils across the US. So Homegrown Minneapolis is one of those food policy councils. So what are the topics that are a part of this interview? So we have both broad topics that are a part of the kind of more stock interview, as well as ones that are specific to Minneapolis. So first, who is participating in the Food Policy Council and what are their motivations? Second, the perceptions of opportunities, assets, challenges in the local food system. Third, the collaboration among FPC policy participants. Four, so how participation shapes understanding of the food system, the views, the issues, and the policies itself. Specifically, we're looking at issues and policy priorities. And then finally, these policy and research outputs. So we've added, I think, 2 or 3 additional questions that look specifically at the experiences of the Minneapolis food action planning process. So what are we asking of the council and particularly of its participants? So our aim is to engage all members of the council in this interview process. And so what are we talking about when we say interview? So we're looking for about 45 or 60 minutes of your total time commitment per individual. And it looks at this kind of iterative interview and survey process. So what I mean by that is kind of taking advantage of the Zoom environment we're living in. We have this iterative process where we're asking you to fill out some survey questions, but we really want to get into and deep dive into those topics through interviews. So it'll kind of go back and forth. And again, it'll last about 45 to 60 minutes. So what happens with the information? I think this is something that we really want to be clear about. So first, the thing that we'll be giving back to Minneapolis is this practitioner's report. So looking specifically at the trends and the initial findings for Minneapolis and really digging into those kind of Minneapolis specific questions. Additionally, like I said, we're trying to roll out this survey and interview at 15 different food policy councils. And this will really come out in this formal research output. So the comparisons across councils, trying to understand the differences between councils. And I put this kind of last bullet point here. Through the process, we'll be de-identifying both for individuals and the council. So by participating in this process, by no way will they be able to know who you are in any way connected to your comments. But additionally, as another layer, there'll be no way through our research outputs that specific comments or specific trends will actually be associated back to Homegrown Minneapolis. And that's something that we do to make sure people are comfortable, but also is a requirement of university research. So with that, I know it was quick, but we're happy to answer any questions anybody may have about the process. And if I can figure out, I'll stop sharing. Great. Any questions from anybody?
So how does Minneapolis benefit from this research?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like I said, one of our main goals is to give back a practitioner's report. So we're really interested in giving back, trying to describe the trends that we're seeing when it comes to policy initiatives, challenges and opportunities across the council in general. But again, we did work with the chairs as well as Tamara to answer and put in those specific questions that are specific to Minneapolis. And that's something that we really want to draw out in that practitioner's report and give back to the council. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you for sharing, Graham. It looks like Saba Siddiqui will not be joining or filling in any other details. I think you've done a stellar job. I am curious, what would next steps look like? Would Food Council members expect more information about this in an email or in a message? What does timeline look like?
Certainly. Yeah. So if everybody is open to it, obviously, we can give more direct information. We have a one-pager just outlining what the study is and describing what we hope to do. So we can definitely get that information out to everybody. Timeline, we obviously hope to get interviews done as quickly as possible, but we also understand that people have personal lives and professional lives. So trying to be flexible and get into people's schedule, like we are saying, we are trying to get interviews and surveys from all the members of the council. So we are trying to be flexible. Our goal is to get interviews done for Minneapolis by the end of June at the latest. But again, as people are available, we would love to kind of work through those.
Thank you for accommodating. And if folks have other questions, they can send them over to Tamara, myself, or Kate, and we can connect to the Syracuse team. Thank you, Graham.
Thank you all.
Beautiful. So our final agenda item for the evening are some city staff updates, specifically some updates around COVID testing. So I'll kick it if Jonathan Russell is on the line. If not, I don't know, Tamara, if you wanted to level set or add anything as well.
I am on the line. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I hear you.
All right. My name is Jonathan. I'm with the City of Minneapolis Health Department, and I'm here out of a, I guess, sort of follow up to a conversation with Tamara about trying to see about providing COVID testing at a food distribution site. Determining that wasn't maybe the best course of action to take. And so instead coming to this meeting to talk a little bit about COVID testing opportunities that the city has. And so I did have a slide, Tamara. I don't know if that's something that you're able to show, or I can try to share from my screen.
I can pull it up in just a moment here. Here we go. One moment.
So we are still in the midst of the pandemic, and we are racing I think to get vaccines out as fast as possible, but testing is still a big part of the strategy to contain the pandemic. And there's lots of different ways to get tested, lots of different places to get tested. The state is operating 3 testing areas in the metro area that are offering testing 7 days a week. But the city is also trying to provide some additional testing resources, especially for individuals or groups where it may be challenging to get to some of the larger state-run testing sites, or may have challenges with getting in for a test with at a health care facility, or paying for a test or something like that. So the tests that we are making available are saliva test kits. So if you haven't done one of these before, it's a small tube that you fill with saliva, and you're given one of these test kits, and then you go through a registration process through through the internet, through an electronic device, to create an account and tie your test into the system, and then it gets sent to a lab for analysis. We use these tests at different pop-up testing events that we have out in the community, but they're also available to just be mailed to individuals at their homes. And that's something that the state does, and also the city does as well. We can send them to individuals, but we can also send them to groups. We've had instances where a company or an organization will reach out and say, can you send a couple dozen kits to our organization so that we can have them to test our staff, or other people that we're working with. So we've also come out and done pop-up testing events at businesses or at organizations where they've requested that health department staff come out and do what we might call like a targeted or a micro testing event. And in a situation like that, staff would be available, or health department staff would be available to help people go through the process of doing the test and registering online, and then getting those tests to the lab so that they can get their results within 24 hours. If a test is requested by mail and then the sample is mailed in, that can take a couple of days. So that's something to be aware of. All right, so on the slide, it does talk about, there's a web address for where to submit a request for testing or for test kits. Also, there's an email address and a phone number that people can call if they have questions about saliva testing, or want to try to get information about getting kits or things like that. So just wanted to make this information available so that it's out there in the community about how to get tested, where to get tested, if there's barriers or challenges for people or groups getting tested in the city, how to access resources through the city's health department to bring testing to them. I think also I had sent a flyer with some information about some pop-up testing that the city is doing, a couple of events in April and May, and then also just the information about the state's larger testing venues, and that there's a link to that in the agenda. So I'm happy to take questions now, or also there, if you copy down the email or the phone number from the slide, you can always reach out to me that way later.
Thank you, Jonathan. Are there any questions? Thank you also for providing those upcoming dates and locations, and also just with vaccine becoming increasingly accessible, reminding all of us that testing and other precautions are still just as important. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All righty. That was our final agenda item for the day. We've completed everything that we had planned, which I almost thought we couldn't at some point around 7. So big ups to everybody who presented and shared and asked questions and engaged, for showing up, but also keeping us on the clock. Thank you, Food Council members, community members, everybody for joining us tonight. You can always reach us at homegrown@minneapolismn.gov. Special shout out to the community members who let us know that the YouTube is not showing Food Council meetings at the present moment, and offering some more feedback about how to make the meeting more accessible. We appreciate that. Do council members, staff, or anyone on the line have other matters they wish to bring before the council before we adjourn? Beautiful. If not, and without objection, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Our next Homegrown Food Council meeting will be on May 12th, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. Peace, everybody. Stay well, stay safe, sending light and love. And hopefully dinner's on the go or almost ready for you. So I know I'm hungry. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thanks.
Good night.